So we're on a first date and we want to start a conversation with somebody to the point where we actually get laid, or we get to a part of the woman where she decides whether or not she's going to sleep with us. Wouldn't that be helpful? Well, that's exactly what we're going to be talking about. So pay attention, get a pen and paper, or pause this a lot and look at the show notes and all that stuff because we time coded. So if you don't know who I am, I'm Steve Maeda. I have a channel. I will show you how to use this to make a movie, video, whatever you want to call it. And I will also show you how to use this to get laid and all sorts of stuff. This video is being recorded live on our call on Wednesday night. As you can see, it's May 2nd at 10:46 p.m. And this is what we do. We have these calls and these men's development groups and all this sort of stuff. And if you subscribe to this channel, you'll get notified about it all. And if you click the bell when you subscribe, you're not going to miss anything. So it's pretty cool. Let's get to this because what we're talking about here is very important. Basically, how you, any man, whatever you want to take it, can take who you are and put it into a conversational template so that you get laid, so that you get your conversations to move fluidly so that you can make connections with people. Now, here's the deal. I don't expect for you to be able to get this just from watching this video. I expect you to watch more videos of mine and to download the different PDFs and all that sort of stuff, which is in the show notes down below for you to work with and absorb and all these things. There are so many tutorials for you to get this right. Take advantage of them. I'll talk about them during the video. So first, what was said was that we wanted to get a stack done by me, meaning a conversational threading per se that's customized from somebody on one of my calls about stuff going on in his life with the intention that he could go out this weekend, talk to a girl, whether he approaches her in a bar or whatever, or goes on a first date with her and be able to get to that point where we can just go right into seduction. Okay, so this is very, very important and it's very easy to do. So step one is let's look at ourselves. For the sake of anonymity, we're not going to say anything private or personal about this gentleman, but basically here's the deal. He's a little bit older. He's in his 40s. He likes to sleep with women. Usually women probably in their upper 20s, maybe mid 30s. But hey, if you're a guy that has sex a lot, you know that you don't really have a type, you have people that you want to have sex with. Now, that being said, he also is a very stand-up guy. So if you're going like, oh my God, I'm not 45 years old and a stand-up guy, he's really not 45. You're thinking that, don't worry about this. You're going to be able to work this template and work it in a pretty awesome way. We have this about him. He's a pretty stand-up guy. He's pretty responsible, a salt of the earth dude, says things straight. He's a father. He's having some issues with his daughter right now, and she got arrested for another DWI. What can we say? We said we're not going to say anything private, whatever. Okay, so he's somebody that is always given to his kids, done the most for them, and they kind of throw it back in his face. I mean, we're familiar with this sort of dynamic. But in this, he said that throughout his parenting, he's always given his best. So one thing that I've always heard him say about his kids, and he said this again, is that no matter what his kids come to him with, he is there to give his best. Now, his best may not be the best thing, but he's there to give his best. Also, he doesn't lie. And so when he tells the truth to them or he's going through a hard time, he figures out the best way to state that truth to his kids. It's a very important thing. But here's the interesting dynamic that came out in the conversation is that his kids, or his daughter, when she gets busted and she's pissed off at him, throws that out in his face in a public situation and embarrasses him. This happens a lot, especially with kids that are all rebellious like this. That being said, how can we turn this conversation? This looks like a train wreck, right? This conversation into a first date conversation. I just met somebody conversation. You're talking 5 minutes with a waitress conversation. How can we do that to bring out seduction and get her to be considering sex with us? That's a lot of crazy factors. In fact, think about this. I'm older. I have kids. I have a kid that doesn't always do the best thing and I get disrespected. How is that going to get a pussy wet? Well, here's the beautiful thing, folks. If you're none of those things or none of the things of whatever else I mentioned before that, is that that has almost nothing to do with what gets you laid or what gets you into seduction in a conversation. What does get you into seduction in a conversation is going to be how that person connects with you and feels you. Very, very important. Drink to that. So So here's how we're going to structure this. Number one, we got to find out our map. And in order to find our map, we have to get our destination. In order to get our destination, we need to find out what the general of this is. So just flag that in your head, write that down on a piece of paper, or better yet, go to the free stuff link down below and download the Instant Connection course. Now, I know some of you may have done that, but it's a video course and it breaks down everything you need to know on how to find the general. We get the general of this and we get it right here. And I'm not going to reveal it just yet because, to be honest, I haven't really thought about it. I'm still constructing this as I'm recording this, and it's a whole big web. You don't want to go in here. It's bad. So basically, we have to get the general, but then also we have to know that there's a structure of conversation that we're going to put that in. Now, number one, whenever I have a bunch of stuff that doesn't connect, that's in a conversation, and I'm almost kind of projecting it out to people, and it's very confusing, kind of like, man, I really love my kid, but she messes up, and these things happen, and da-da-da-da, and then there's this checklist, and when she was 15 years old, and then, 19, and now that she's 23, blah, it's too freaking confusing. What I do is I go into a storytelling template. So my structure of conversation is going to be a storytelling template. Now, the other thing that's going to happen here is I also want to add in some cold reads just because they work and they're good in this situation. And I'll explain them very thoroughly here in a second. But we were also talking about it on the call. Somebody brought up an old cold read that I did that I forgot about. And I'm like, dude, that's awesome. So we're going to slip that in there. We're going to also show how that cold read works because it's going to hit really hard. And when you do something that's that powerful and impactful, then you're going to have to do what's called a heavy ground. So with whatever I do is there's always a ground or something like that. But you're going to have to, whenever there's a big moment in a conversation, there's going to be a ground. So I know you've been watching this for a whole long time. Let's get to it. Step one, download the Instant Connection course. Just joking. It's really to find the ground. The ground for this is going to be, in fact, what he originally asked me to break down was that in order to value something in my life, I have to invest in it. Which the first thing I thought with that was something that I say all the time is in order for me to value something in my life, I have to lose it and work for it back. Almost the same, but different. I think he would agree with me, but investing in something doesn't necessarily mean you lose it, but it means that you put work into it. My take on that, the way I understand it, is that I have to, or I don't have to, but the more I lose things, like an example I always give is like, in order for me to value honesty, I have to value honesty, I have to work for it, then I have to realize, man, it's so much better to lie. And then I have to have a life of lying, dislike it, see that that's wrong, work back to gain honesty, and then I value it. Okay, so that's the concept that I go working off of, but perhaps what he's saying is that in this case, his daughter, he invested in her his entire life, these certain values that he felt were good, and whether she cared about them or not, it was something that proved his worth to her. Now, once again, how does this make sense with getting a chick all hot and bothered and wet for you and so on? It really doesn't. It's the conversational key that's key. But if we're going to work a conversational map or key or template without us, we're sociopaths. It just doesn't feel good. It doesn't work as good. And it also misses one of the key components of what actually makes this work, which is your true self. Okay. So the only way we're going to be our true self is if we add in this awesome template of conversation that is very adaptable and you can work ourselves. And also if we add ourselves, it's much easier to elicit emotions, get emotional about them and so on. And just look, we're born to be social. We're born to be sexual. We don't need all these weird constructs for it. We need to be ourselves most. So we have this general, and the general once again is what? It is that in order for us to value something, we have to have invested in it. So here's what we do with that first thing. When we get that general, and remember, if you're having trouble with this, you download the Instant Connection course, you go through it, you go on the Austin Men's Development Board and you say, Steve, I'm having trouble with this or whoever, and you'll get the phone book back of people helping you out. Basically on our first date, or let's say we're talking to a waitress, or we talk to a girl at a bar and we're just, having whatever small talk. And you shouldn't overthink this. Basically, as soon as somebody is paying attention to you, you can do what I call a hard turn. Basically, you could be talking about the weather. You could be talking about, your favorite basketball team or whatever, or how much green tea you drink, or green smoothies, which is what we were talking about earlier, or the world's sexiest vegan. That being said, is we could be having any of those conversations and we just ask the question about our general. So we go, hey, you know what? This is an odd question, but how do you find the value in something you you really love. Like, what does that mean to you? So with that, they're going to be inevitably confused. You can expect that they will be confused when you ask a question like that. That's the point. Not necessarily to confuse them, but to move on this topic, to move in this direction that we can predict. So we basically ask them about how they find their values. They don't know. They're confused. So then we have the opportunity to ground, okay? So in our ground, we're still not going to make everything clear here. This is a big concept that we're talking about. It's not going to be gotten. In fact, anything that you value, as you'll learn in the Instant Connection course, you will see you basically can't describe in a few sentences. It's going to take you a long time to be able to share what you really think and believe in. But we're going to move on to this ground. In an initial ground should be about 10 to 15 seconds. Don't overthink this and time it, but what that means is just short and concise, 3 sentences, whatever. If you're like me, I can draw them out because I'm good at this. But I basically say like, hey, how do you discover your values, or what do you know what you value? They're confused. They don't know. You look at them. And now we move into this story that might be hard to get, the beginning of the ground, which is going to be about 15 seconds. We say, you know what? Look, I have a daughter. And man, she's something that I've loved the most in my life. She's something that has pissed me off in the biggest ways. But the fact of the matter is she has taught me more about how much I value her, value itself, and made me think about how I interpret and act upon my values more than anything. All right? Good enough for a ground. I don't know how many sentences that was, but it's not long and easy to articulate. And this kind of encompasses the general topic. So whatever that may be, whatever interesting idea I have, I need to be able to put into a ground that makes sense. A 15-second, short, to the point, generalized concept of what's going on in my life, okay? Now, very, very important. Now, how I end that is with a qualifier. Now, you're going to see this over and over again. In fact, this is giving you trouble. Look at this video card right here, and this will tell you about social dynamics being taught very specifically. In that, you're going to find lots of videos that break down conversational skills, and you should do them. But if you're smart, again, Instant Connection course, it's free. If you get spammed too much by me, email-wise, and don't like it, you just opt out, but you keep the course. It's really cool. You can do it. Please do it, and then you can ask questions on the AMD board, Awesome Men's Development board, if you so dare. Now we move to this second question. Okay, so we said the beginning question about values, we talked about our daughter, and then we move in to that last question, or the second question, which feels like more of a challenge. But here's the trick, just for learning's sake, just for you, because I've taught this for a long time to thousands of people, and now millions on YouTube. But I'm just going to keep it as the same question, or generally the same question of like, so what is it that you value? So if we just rewind really quick, we go, hey, what is it that you value? And then you say, you know what? We move to the ground. They're confused. We say, I know it's a weird question and it's something that's been on my mind, but look, I have a daughter and she's amazing, but she's also somebody that pisses me off the most. And she's taught me the most about how much I value her, how much I value things I invest in, as well as my own personal values. So let me ask you, what is it that you value? This is an amazing concept and template, but it's just step one. You might be going, this is too difficult. Go to Starbucks, talk to the barista. When there's not a line, you go in at like 2 p.m. or whatever, whenever there's not a line, maybe you have to go to 2 Starbucks that day and you just go like, hey, what do you value? They say, I don't know, I guess my time, or some superficial question or answer back. And you just say, well, look, man, I value a lot of things, but it's hard to put in perspective because, you know, I'm a father, but I'm also an entrepreneur and all this. And man, I get so confused. So I really do value my time. And I also value my peace of mind. What's one way that what do you value? What do you value like that? I was going to switch it there because it's a little bit better, and my natural way of doing it would be to say, how do you find time or peace of mind or whatever? But just practice that. You're going to notice that second question you ask is going to be more powerful. Let's move on. All right, I know that's a lot that's been said to you, but what we're going to do here is we're now going to move in how we're going to move into this storytelling structure. Okay, the storytelling structure is very similar to this question, ground, question. It's extremely similar. In fact, when I was teaching way back when I did my first TSL Online, which is one of our flagship courses. It was the first online course that I ever did, and it's still the best online course that I've ever did because it's been improved a lot. But in 2009, how we did storytelling was we basically said there's a thesis, there's content, and there's a definition. What was interesting about the storytelling, and it ended up becoming Qualifier Ground Qualifier in a shortened version, but what we did in storytelling was that we could get a really awesome thesis, right? And then we could get a really awesome definition, and they had to do with one another. And they were challenging, and they were just powerful. If we could do that, then the content could go on for minutes. All right. We had to have good delivery, and there were some things that we did to help out with that delivery. But to the guy I'm talking to, he'd soar at this. But the beginning and end just have to nail it. If we could do that, then it really didn't matter. We could wind on about stuff, and we could use little tricks to help out. So basically we could say, so we get through that, what do you value? And they still can't answer because it's tough. They don't know us, and they're confused, and they're on the spot and all this stuff. And we're going to get there with the cold read thing. The cold read thing is going to smoke everything. It's going to, in fact, you could just jump right here to wherever it is in the video to the cold read thing and skip the storytelling thing. But for teaching purposes and for my friend, we're going to do the storytelling thing. We could just say, well, what do you value? And I know it's tough, and I talked about my daughter and all this stuff, but I'm going to tell you this. Boom. Thesis. Thesis being very similar to the general, but we're going to make it a statement. We're going to say, but you know what? What I value is something that I've invested in. That's good enough. Pretty cool. We're saying it emphatically. It's a definition. It seems to be something that has life meaning in it. Okay. So this is something that I live by. All right. Now, I might have a little bit of a different interpretation than our friend on the call, but we're going with that thesis, man. That thesis can do so much. Now, if we stick to this principle, if I'm a good enough storyteller, okay, so verbally, face-to-face, one-on-one, pretty goddamn good storyteller. Maybe on YouTube videos or whatever, I am no Peter McKinnon, man. That motherfucker does some good shit. So the thing is that now when we move to this story, I could talk about anything if I'm face to face. So if I go like, and just check this out, just check it out. Give me a minute. Just give me 1 minute. I say, man, you know what? See, when it comes down to boom, thesis is what I value is something that I've invested in, and it has to be that way. And let me just tell you something. Like, look, this is my phone, and well, you don't want to see those text messages. Naked pics aren't very good, but you know, hey, especially from guys, like who wants a dick pic right now at 11:05 p.m. This is something that's very special for me, you know, because I used it to make my first 500 videos. My first 500 videos on YouTube was made by an iPhone. In fact, that's not true. The first videos were made by a camera, which is sitting back here that's broken, that I still haven't thrown away because it fell in the water when I was doing Wim Hof stuff. Isn't that nuts? That's crazy. You think you would learn your lesson, but I didn't. I kept doing Wim Hof stuff, and I said, man, you know what? I got to shoot more videos and teach more social dynamics, so I'm going to use my phone, and I did, and it was freaking awesome, man. So it's really kind of a cool thing, and now I'm really into it. If you want to learn how to text message, I can show you how to use this to really, man, whoo, it's getting hot in here. So, and for that, you should probably download the text messaging guide. All of that is a story which made no sense, and it took more than a minute. I lied to you. Didn't mean to, but I got carried away with talking. I just had to be good enough to talk about something, all right? And if I'm face-to-face with you, you're going to pay more attention to me. So what do? Is I need to end that. I need to end that whole thing about the iPhone and shooting videos with this and all this sort of stuff. So let's say I end it and I go like, man, and if you have one of these and you want to learn how to text message, I can show you, well, man, it's getting hot in here. It's almost like I rehearsed that. And I swear to God, I didn't. But see, in that, definition time, in that, man, I learned how to value something a lot. I learned how to value not only my message and my word because I had to work at it harder, but I learned how to value it because I used something which was inferior to the camera that I was using, and it didn't matter because I was going to put something out anymore or more than anything else. And that defined me more as a teacher and as somebody that, God, invests in his clients and people and all that sort of stuff more than anything. That's pretty cool, right? That was me talking about a fucking phone somehow and what I invest in, a life goal, a life value. So if we take that template and we talk about his daughter, it's going to work, all right? Especially if he's good enough to carry on that story. And all you need to know to carry on a story, yeah, there's all these technical things, but here's the deal. Are they looking at you or are they looking at their watch? Are they looking at you or are they looking at their phone? Are they looking at you or are they ordering from the menu? Are they yawning? If they're looking at you, you're good. If they're not looking at you, jump to the definition, or you can do some social dynamic tricks, which I would say a check-in is one, which might be something like, man, you've heard of that before. You're just checking in with them. Or wait, did I tell you this story? You could say, or you know what? Are you somebody that can relate with this or no or whatever? It's just a check-in, okay? That's very, very easy. Or you could do things like different stops and starts, like, oh man, oh geez, I shouldn't tell you this. So little forms of bait like that. These are all really simple things that you could add into it. But if you're starting out with it, just jump to your definition when they start looking at their watch. You could be like, man, and I had this phone and my camera fell in the water and I recorded all these YouTube things. Man, I'm boring you. But that's how I found out how to value what I value in life, by investing in it. So you can just very easily jump to the definition. So now let's workshop this again. Oh my God, this is getting old, but we're beating a dead horse. Boom. My man is talking about something with a waitress, a bartender, a girl that he met at the bar or on his first date. And they're talking about, their green tea enemas that they did in Esalen in California or whatever. And he goes, man, I was just thinking about this because white tea is so much more filled with antioxidants than green tea, but it made me think about what I value and what I've invested in. And that's something that I really live by. And just to put this in perspective, like, look, I was talking about my daughter and so on. And, she got a DUI, DWI, and there's all this money and all this stuff. And the thing is this is somebody, like I said, I've invested so much of my time into who I am, what I am, and it shaped what I believe in. And one of those things is that right now, to be honest with you, I'm going to tell you, is I don't really know what to do. I'm just doing. But one of the things that I value most is doing what I've always believed in and gotten results more than changing up the game plan in a time of need. And, it's like, man, geez, she's said all this stuff and embarrassed me. She needs more money and part of me wants to cut her off. I don't know what to do. I bounce stuff off other people, but at the end of the day, I'm the one acting and I'm the one who has a daughter that deserves my best and demands me being my best. And this is the only way I know how to do it. And man, it carries into all things in my life. So look, that's why I really believe investing in something I believe in. That's what I live by. All right, now I just gave an anthem about how badass I am for having whatever, but let's change it again because I know some of you guys, I know I'm boring you, but I know some of you, there's that guy out there that's about to turn this off that's going, but that sounded really cool. What if I'm not cool? What if I make all the wrong weak decisions? So let's do that again. All right, thesis. What about, or what do you, oh man, what is it again? See, I can't even remember. Thesis. I live for certain values in my life that I've invested on. All right. Pretty cool statement. Now let's get to the story of somebody who doesn't have a lot of good things going on in their life. Let's take the same story, but different perspective. We go, man, I was talking about my daughter and she just got a DWI and I don't know what to do, man. I give her money, I spoil her, but I walk out feeling like garbage every time I do it, and it doesn't feel good. Like, in fact, I get more anxiety about her DWI than her. In fact, I'll even say this, that I am more in doubt or in fear of not only what's going to happen to her, but what I'm going to do, how I'm going to help her, how I'm going to work through all this stuff. And that's how I go to bed at night. Man, it sucks. I don't know what to do. I'm just going to tell you, definition time. What I value is something that I've invested in. And right now I'm invested in a broken, empty piggy bank and I hear the quarters hitting the floor. But that's life. Either way, all right, is good. Why is it good? Because somebody understands me. In order for somebody to understand me, this is another principle of social dynamics. I used to bring this up all the time. Was that in order for somebody to understand me, they have to be open. They have to be opened up, and if they're opened up, I can get in there and talk and interact. We see this happen all the time with people who are like the master manipulator, especially guys who are drug addicts or people who are alcoholics. They're always going to tell their sob story and open somebody up and get a party listening to them. For better, for worse, that happens. That doesn't just happen with one person. That happens with everybody if you're able to have that conversation. So that's really important. If you can get somebody to listen to you, that's key. Now, the principle of social dynamics that I based this off of way back when was that there's certain topics that if people talked about them, they had to be in rapport or comfort. Things like if they really talked about their family, their values, their fears, their insecurities, the things that kept them up at night, the things that made them fall in love, they had to be their real selves to do that. Remember that cold read I was telling you about? It's genius time, people, because now you're going to get the good stuff. Let's say we go through that. We do the initial rapport cycle of saying like, hey, what do you value? and they don't really know, or I forget what the actual opening qualifier was. And then we say, man, look, I'll tell you this. I value things that I invest in. And one of the things that I've invested in most with is my daughter. I've put my heart and soul into her, and sometimes it comes out good, but a lot of times it comes out bad. So let me just ask you, what do you really value? What makes you know that? You say, I know it's a confusing question, but for me, you go into storytelling time, values mean a ton. It means that I've invested in something. We go through that story. I won't bore you through it for the 18th time in this freaking episode. And then we end it with a definition. And the definition says, and that's how I know I value what I value, because I've invested myself in it. In fact, I want to know this. Boom, cold read time. And this is why we want this. Because if somebody's understood our story, they weren't looking at their watch or their phone or the menu or telepathically communicating to some strange person somewhere else. We know that they were listening to us. And if they've incubated in us, then there's a little bit of that window open. Now we're going to cold read, or we could do a bunch of different stuff. But before we get into the cold read, let's say this. A cold read is not a tool of manipulation. A lot of people think that. I can't ever make you, no matter how good I am, I can't make you think something you don't want to think. I can only make you think something that's already in your head. The truest value of a cold read isn't that I'm right, but it's that you decide to go along with what I'm saying, that you decide, you choose to invest a certain part of yourself in it. So I could say a cold read like, man, I bet you're like the clumsiest person, like especially like in public, which is very common for everybody. But if you do that cold read and you say it to somebody and they disagree with you and say, no, I'm not. I could say, well, I don't know. It was just something about like how you act, you remind me of something, but I think I know you. If they go with that, like, oh, well, yeah, I guess maybe he does know me, then you're good. If they go, you know what, maybe he doesn't know me, but they still talk to you, you're still good, but just not as good as the first one. Okay, so a cold read is just a tool to kind of open somebody up. Now, in this cold read, we're going to move into something super, super awesome. So we just went through this story. We opened somebody else up. They heard all about us, whether it was positive or negative, but they followed the little template that I gave you, and then we just go. Man, I want to know something, and this might be kind of inappropriate, but what are you most insecure about? Expect to get silence there. In fact, remember when I said you could do the initial rapport cycle, skip the storytelling, and just go right to this? You could do that, and you should do that. That's probably what I would do, unless I just wanted to tell a story about my drunken daughter. If I say something like, man, what's the thing you're most insecure about? I can expect she will be nervous as hell. But here's the cold read part, is I can also expect that she has a flash in her mind of a few things. I just did 6 because in the cold read that I wrote down for this guy, there were 6. I can expect that she has a flash in her mind of a few different things. In fact, I can expect in her mind that she thinks of at least one of those things. I can also expect that it would be inappropriate for her to tell me, and that she thought of it, almost told me, but then she decided not to because she doesn't. Then I can expect that she's probably told a best friend about this. Then I can also expect there's people in her family that she chose not to tell about this. So all these things I can expect and can probably be right about something that's super insecure. Pretty interesting. Now, if I know that information, what can I do with it? So what if I know it? Here's what I would do. Let's rewind. Not really, but back to what I was saying. What is something that you're like really insecure about? All right, I pause and I just laugh and I say, man, all right. So I know it's a crazy question and you probably just thought about like 6 things in your mind and you've probably told your best friend and like have certain family members and people that you don't tell about and you barely even know me, so you don't say it. But like, that's something that's connected to the deepest part of you and I don't even need to know it. Man, am I really going to tell you this? I probably shouldn't tell you this. And then of course she says, tell me. And then I say, all right, look, I always ask something like that when I meet somebody I like my really good friend, when I met them, I asked them a really tough question because I always want to see how they react. And I don't really care about what the insecurity is. Actually, I do care about what it is, but the honesty in you is good. Like I could see that, and that is freaking hot. Boom! That's where you get it. So what I just did there, if we rewind it once again, as I say, a tough question, like what's your biggest insecurity? I then call out the things in a nice way. I call out the things that she's going to be thinking because I can kind of expect that. Even if I'm wrong, even if I just say one of them, I'm still good. But it would be like, what's the thing you're most insecure about? Call out the things and just say, or actually I buffer it and I say, man, that is too crazy. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to ask something like that, but you probably just thought about like 3 or 4 things in your head, and they're things that you've told your best friend and would never tell your family. And why would you tell a stranger? That right there calms it down. And then I do the old switcheroo, which is basically an old routine that I would do is I'd put somebody in a high pressure situation. I'd let the gas off, and I'd just say, man, I just wanted to see you under pressure because I saw the real you, and the real you is beautiful. Now, in that, I would try and actually literally and legitimately find a cold read, something I noticed about their mannerism, and comment on it. So I'd say like, man, when you're under pressure, your smile is just, it's beautiful. I can't tell you this, man. I can't tell you this is the first date. Jesus. And then all of a sudden they blush, and you can see them start to slide off their seat and get uncomfortable because their heartbeat just went from here down there, and they're communicating to you at a different level. So this is like some really, really good social dynamic stuff. Now, here's the deal. All right. We get into that deep rapport. We get into that deep connection. It means nothing if we can't move to some sort of intent. Now, intent might mean that to men, it's like, well, we knew we liked each other. It was all good. But women need to hear you say that. And they need to hear you say it, not for the reason that you just noticed. So just to make this clear is that if you make out with a girl in a bar, she still needs to know you like her for not making, or aside from making out with her in the bar. So if you just found this deep thing about her and it was like, man, I just saw the beautiful smile that's within you, you need to then go, you know what? For all that you just said and whatever, and what I just noticed and that moment we had, like, I like you. But I knew from the moment of walking in that there was something in here that I was going to find special, and I'm glad I found it. They need to know that you like them. They need to know that you like them for what you just experienced, but also the stuff surrounding that experience. That's very important to make your intent work, because intent is meaningless if I just do it to you. It only has meaning once it gets done back to me, or when it cycles. All right. So that's when we move out of the friend zone into some sort of dating seduction moment. You should take a note of that. So to rewind, what did we do? We took a story about ourselves, right? That basically said, number one, rapport cycle. That's the question ground question. And we just said like, hey, what do you value? Look, I value this. Man, what do you value? Then we moved into a story. That story was generally that same thing as a rapport cycle with a strong definition. Okay, so it was actually a statement, and then a strong thesis, and then a strong definition that were both statements that were very strong, sandwiched with something which, could be about an iPhone, could be about failing, could be about succeeding. And then we moved on to that cold read dynamic, which started out with a hard qualifier of basically saying, hey, what are you most insecure about? We expect that it's going to be, like not so good. Then we're able to go through our stack of the cold reads, of which I know you just thought of it. You've probably told a friend, you're afraid to tell your family, and why would you tell a stranger? And then we say, hey, but you know what? I don't need to know the answer, but it was really to see the real side of you, and that real side of you is beautiful. And you know what? And then we end it with intent. Let's go back up to here to intent. We say, hey, look, man, I knew I liked you when I walked in, but just seeing that side of you makes me like you more. And God, I bet you're a really good kisser. And God, I shouldn't be saying this, man. Anyway, I'm just going to stop, and you think of something to say. Boom. You want to get laid on a first date and you don't have a conversation like that. You don't download the instant connection. You're a fool. So what I want you to do right now is make sure you go up to this video, which is going to tell you how to break down all your different rapport cycles and so on, and make you more affluent in all of this awesome stuff. And then, of course, subscribe to this channel because it'll do you some freaking good. I'm Steve Maeda. I'm signing off. Click the free stuff link down below to get the instant connection course, and we'll see ya. Bye.